Hi, everyone. Good evening. This is Michael, and I'm down here in the Helsinki area, in the Temple of Silence, well, relative silence at the moment, and Tuya's up in the Little Bear Meditation Center. So, actually, actually, she's in the home of Santa Claus right now. Maybe you didn't realize this, but Santa Claus really comes from Finland, and his home is well marked out. And there are some places dedicated to his presence. I think, if I'm correct, he comes from, his workshop is in Ear Mountain, something of that nature. And there's a place that is dedicated very much to Santa, and that's where she is. So tonight we're going to be working a little more on the soul of nations. And we'll be reading from the book, The Destiny of the Nations. It's a wonderful little book written mostly after World War II, and I think still very relevant. So we do all kinds of things on this particular program. When there are emergencies, we psychologically and spiritually support a beneficent outcome. We think about our own relation to our particular nation. We also study different nations and the emergence of their higher qualities. So I'm going to switch this around a little and read from where we were in this book, around page right before 27. I'm going to go backward a little bit, and he tells us we've considered three major energies which are pouring into our planetary life at this time through the three major centers, and energies of first, second, and third ray, Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity. It remains for us now to consider the energy of the two minor rays, the sixth and the seventh, which are in many ways of more immediate moment to the masses and of tremendous effectiveness. One is of moment because of its pronounced hold and because of the crystallization it has produced. Particularly, let's see if I can get this here. Particularly in the world of thought. And that's the sixth ray, which is fading out and was coming in its recent cycle around 1625 and will be pretty well out by the end of this century. And the other, because its hold and its power, its influence and its effects will be of an increasing momentum, and that is the seventh ray, in so many ways impulsed by Sir Francis Bacon in the early 17th century, and he was, as you know, an earlier incarnation of Le Comte de Saint-Germain, the Count, and Master R. Rakotsi, the seventh ray master. So one of these is potent in producing the necessity for the present chaos, and I guess that word necessity has to be noticed. And the other is potential, and holds in its activity the seeds of the future. Whenever there's a transition between an incoming and an outgoing ray, there will be a chaotic situation, unsettled, until it is settled. And the same goes for zodiacal constellations. Now here's where we left off, really. This is a fact of great interest and of really practical import. And now DK starts a new subject here. It takes us, moreover, into the realm of prevision, astrologically often associated with the second ray and the sign Sagittarius and the planet Jupiter. The realm of prevision, of course. The solar angel has great prevision and is said to see, in the case of the human being which it is supervising, a number of lives that went before and a number of lives to come. He doesn't say specifically, but maybe, I don't know, maybe 5 lives either way. But I'm not certain of that. I would have you remember at this point that no prevision is divorced entirely from the past, but that there must always be the seed of truth. Otherwise you would have these wild fantasies about what might happen, and they just lead people astray. They are not intended, they're not part of the plan, they're just the fancy of the individual. The law of cause and effect holds good eternally, and particularly so in the realm of spiritual insight, so rapidly developing at this time. And that's because the Buddhic factor is, coming in. Spiritual insight which enables the seer to see the future as it may be and to forecast coming eventualities. I think Master DK is very good at this. He's not perfect because humanity has not taken up some of the opportunities which were offered and thereby negated what prevision held as a possibility. Going on, there are several ways in which such prevision can, during the next 3 centuries, be developed in the race of men. It's interesting about 3 centuries because he told us that we could not guarantee a proper entrance into the age of Aquarius. If there was delay, it would be for about 300 years. So those figures kind of add up. Anyway, prevision is to be developed, and I think Aquarius has a lot to do with that too, ruled as it is by Jupiter in its esoteric aspect. Now, the first way in which prevision can be developed, number 1, through the development of soul contact among the advanced members of the race, because after all, the soul can see ahead. The solar angel, the angel of the presence, can see ahead as well as before. This contact will relate soul knowledge with brain impression, and if the meditating factor of the mind is duly trained and controlled, there will be a correct foreknowledge of individual destiny and coming events. I'm reminded here of DK saying regarding the immediate future that the masters know, at least in a certain respect, what will happen, but they are not allowed to divulge that. Probably taking, if they did, taking from humanity the privilege of correct choice or the learning that will arise from incorrect choice. Okay, more prevision. Number 2, through the development of the science of astrology, and there's lots of that in this particular book, through the development of the science of astrology, a science which is as yet in its infancy and which is based on so many uncertain factors that it is difficult for a student to arrive at those true indications which will truly present the future. If you happen to be an astrologer, you don't want to tie anybody's hands. You don't want to say something that will put chains on the individual's sense of choice. At the same time, you do want to indicate what may be a better direction than the one that they might have been choosing. Going on, character indications and small personality happenings can frequently and correctly be deduced, but the general subject remains until today much too nebulous for certitude. I will later deal with this matter and will indicate the lines along which future investigation should proceed. I think, if we look at the astrological signs and planets which rule particular nations, we will see them in demonstration, oftentimes demonstrating in a purely personal manner, and sometimes in cooperation with the soul of a particular nation. And now here's another indication of how prevision can be developed through the recurrence of soothsaying. In the old language, sooth meant truth, okay? More in the Elizabethan English. I'm not sure about the Middle English and Older English, but perhaps. Through the recurrence of soothsaying and the reappearance of those ancient, quote, informers of the race, close quote, who in Roman times were called sibyls, mediums and oracles. These mediums, for such they were, will be trained by the workers upon the seventh ray, interesting, right, to speak under inspiration from the hierarchy, whose foreknowledge extends far ahead into the future, but does not extend beyond 2,000 years. Now that's an interesting specificity, isn't it? How far ahead can a member of the hierarchy see? Well, we're given here apparently a limit, but even that much, or some of it, would be an important indication to rather blind humanity. These mediums will, however, only be used under direction after careful training, and only twice a year at the May and June full moon rituals. So we learn there are rituals, inner rituals for these particular full moons. I assume he means the Wesak and the Festival of the Christ, or Festival of Humanity. And there's a lot of the two planets, Mercury and Venus, involved in this process. Mercury being a planet of not only mentality but of intuition, and Venus not only of love but of great clarity of mind. Going on a little, as to the prevision with which I shall deal, orthodox as it may appear to be, to unorthodox rather, as it may appear to be to some of you, it will be based upon two factors. First of all, the logical indications to be gathered from the past and present events which condition the immediate future, and which must inevitably lead to definite and tangible happenings. So it's not like we develop, or the master relinquishes his reasoning mind. There has to be a cause rooted in the past and logical developments into the future. Any deep student of human affairs could follow the same line of reasoning and come to approximately the same conclusions. So this is a more conventional logical approach, reasonable approach, provided, now here's the hint, he loved his fellow men enough to see them truly as they were and allow, consequently, for the appearance of the unexpected. Well, you know, love reveals, and love opens the eyes, and love allows us to speak with truth what the condition is, without wanting to artificially elevate someone or something, or put down someone or something. Love is truthful and on the level, and I'm not talking about infatuation, I'm talking about real love. Okay, so we have the first of these methods of developing prevision, following out logic and reason. And secondly, what I may say to you is based on a knowledge of the ray influences, which are at this time so powerfully and effectively affecting humanity and its coming civilization and culture. And certainly a master like DK is considered to be an expert in ray assessment. So here I would ask you, he says, therefore, to read what I have to say with an open mind. I would beg you to relate my words to present world conditions and to see, emerging from the realms of subjectivity, those forces and potencies which are directly changing the current of men's thoughts, which are molding their ideas and incidentally altering the face of the earth and the policies of nations. Well, I think, you know, what lies ahead, of course, is very interesting. I wish we could deal with it. But we have to be, you know, cautious and not go too far. So this is the end of reading on the 21st, just before the equinox, really, 21st of September. Okay, and the year is 2019. And what he's going to be getting into next is the contrast. It's very interesting too, because this is one of the sections where the contrast between the sixth and seventh ray, that contrast is explored quite meticulously, and in a way, I think, which is revelatory to us. So what I want to do here, I don't want to lose my way. I want to, basically what I've done is switch over to, I've switched over to the book, and basically I want to alert myself if I'm the one who's doing this, and could be Tuya, could be me on these things. So I want to alert myself to what's coming up, and this is the beginning of the discussion of abstract idealism and devotion, which, well, it seems to be going out of incarnation, but as you may know, it's still got 21,000 years of a longer cycle to run. And if we take that into consideration, well, it'll be with us a very, very long time. So this is ending on the 21st of September 2019, and start. I have a keyboard here that doesn't always like to respond, unfortunately. It's one of those kind of independent keyboards, let me put it like that. And it's going to start on the 28th of September, and again, 2019. Okay. Thanks for indulging me on that. I just like to get that clear. Okay. Now, let's go on and think a little bit about the international situation. It is fraught with difficulty at this time. It seems that whenever you're on the edge of a breakthrough, the possibility of cleansing, let's say, humanity's interplay, of learning how to share, of learning what peace really is, there are going to be resistant forces. And we have them now. And they arise not only from the interference of the forces of obstruction, which are potent and active today, but they arise from the unredeemed aspect of human nature. People who have fought their way to the top and can condition the psyche of a nation or even the international situation are not necessarily the best people. They are powerful, but to combine power with a real sense of ethics and a love of humanity and a concern for its welfare, that's fairly rare. Abraham Lincoln had this. Otto von Bismarck did not have this, and they were considered to be parallel avatars of a humankind one arising from the soul of his people, and the other a representative of the forces of materialism. And thus it goes. So we who know a little bit about the interior life have got to exert ourselves esoterically in the right way and in the right direction, and that is by contributing to the welfare of our nation and of humanity as a whole. It's got to be on our mind, not just our little personal, individual condition, but a great light from above has to enter our psyche and stimulate the higher thoughts, the higher energies, and the possibility of making a real contribution of a spiritual kind to the welfare of probably millions of people, whether a few million or many million, who live in our country. And when we're dealing with humanity, we're dealing with an incarnated billions. In the human race. And we're dealing with people at all different stages who are trying to become more illumined, whether or not they are conscious of this fact. How to be a good citizen of one's nation? Think about that for a minute. How would you be a good citizen of your nation? I think one of the ways of doing that is to really align with the motto of your nation, or if your nation is not one of those, maybe larger or developed nations, developed at that time, such that he gave a motto, then you look at the planetary center with which your nation is affiliated. When raising our nation, stimulating its causal body, its egoic lotus, helping its particular contribution to humanity and the many nations, we realize we are serving the great Lord, the head of the hierarchy. And we affirm our service of the Lord Maitreya we have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya. Be with us. the service of the Christ as he fulfills his coming functions, assisting to prepare men's minds and hearts for the externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the Christ. This is a way we serve all of humanity, not only our nation, of course. But think of it. Here we have, the outline of various nations, and probably where you live or spend most of your time is indicated here. Now, I want us to think, we know something about the soul of our nation, right? Let's see if I have, these mottos, of course, are for the larger nations, or the nations that were considered quite important among the many nations at the time this book was written. But we have some idea of what the soul of our nation may be, and of its qualities, of its life, its quality, and how it should appear. So I'm going to ask us, what do we think is the next particular quality which is trying to emerge spiritually in our particular nation? What might that emergent quality be in our nation? On this tabulation, we see the soul qualities, particularly the ray, the motto, and we see the personality ray too, and how it can be converted to spiritual purposes, but not all nations are listed here. And it may be that some particular quality which is not here is preparatory to the final motto. There's a lot of, I'll just take the United States, for instance. I light the way. Well, wouldn't we all say there's a lot of work to be done on the solar plexus of that nation, and the maturity level, and the selflessness level, before it becomes possible to light the way. So what do we think? Our nation, what specifically, right now, in our best judgment, is trying to emerge in our nation, which will take us yet one more step towards spirituality and usefulness to the soul of humanity. And I'm going to ask us, given the qualities that any one of us may have, and really we have a causal body filled with quality after millions of years of development, really. In what way, if any way, am I, with my qualities, contributing to the emergence of this next beneficial quality my nation is trying to produce or trying to express? Something's trying to come out of my nation, and how am I helping that to happen? And I suppose it is inevitable for us to ask ourselves, in the light of the soul, how could I do a still better job helping with this emergence? Because indeed we are working interiorly, and it is significant that when the causal body or egoic lotus of any nation has reached a sufficient degree of qualitative development, it will be able to have, the nation will be able to have its own esoteric school. And those esoteric schools will be deeply responsible and effective in spreading the knowledge of the ageless wisdom, which is so essential to the continued development of humanity. You know, HBB telling us by the end of the 21st century, it must have won the day, meaning, I suppose, command respect from thinking people, and widely studied and researched, and new doors will open. And of course, the Christ is the general manager of so much of this. He was, in the Second World War, the commander of the forces of light. We would not have maybe associated a word like commander with with him, but he had a huge responsibility. And when you read in Externalization of the Hierarchy, you see that without some of the things the Christ and the Buddha did, humanity would very probably have gone down to defeat and some kind of new beginning back a very long ways would have to be instituted. We're helped in so many ways, just the way a young child is helped by his or her parents and does not see the help, but there it is all the time. And that's the way it is for humanity too. So we have to have this gratitude. So let's think about the great invocation, this shambolic invocation, and align with it, realizing what a great word of power it is, and how we must learn to use it and spread knowledge of it far and wide. Well, friends, we're reaching the end of our meditation, and I want to thank you for being here with us. We have to be persistent. It is a quality, well, not only of the first ray, but of the second ray and the sixth ray, and really the quality of any soul. Once we begin to realize the stakes and the moment at which humanity finds itself. Now, to close, I'd like to play this I vow to thee, my country. The words are put to the music, and you'll recognize the music, of course. I think Dame Kiri Takanawa sings it, I think so. And it gives us an idea of the kind of spiritual patriotism we owe to our nation, and we owe even more, of course, to humanity. Nations are much more transient, excuse me, transient than is the human soul. But even that has its transience. So many blessings to everybody, lots of love from Tuya and me, from all our co-workers, and there's so many possibilities. Friends, let your work during these last 5.5 years in the era of the Forerunner really count for yourself, your group, your nation, and for humanity.